I have got 6 picks that are guaranteed to make you 25 times your money on PrizePicks today. But before we jump into it, make sure y'all are checking out the links in the description because down there you will find my X profile where I have been posting these early in the morning. And as you can see here, I have posted this at roughly 6 a.m. Central Time this morning. Also in the description, you will find a link to a positive EB sports betting website, and it's called Daily Grind Fantasy. And if you don't believe in Daily Grind Fantasy, you're wrong, because I just netted my 25 times multiplier yesterday betting on the League of Legends, which I have absolutely no idea about. Never watched League of Legends, never played League of Legends. I've only ever heard of it. So when I saw Daily Grind Fantasy post a positive EV play on their platform, I took it and I never thought twice about it. Ended up netting 25 times my money here. So also, if you were tailing yesterday's bets, you saw that we went 2 and 3, having Devin Booker be the only one that did not cash this bet for us. Although it looked really good, he only had 4 rebounds plus assists throughout the first half, but then ended up getting 11 rebounds plus assists in the second half. So very disappointing to see him almost essentially hit this line in the second half alone. Ended up crushing our entire parlay here. Anyways, though, I do have 6 very good picks for you today, so let's go ahead and jump into them. First on this list is CJ McCollum going under 22.5 points plus rebounds. He has played the Charlotte Hornets team one other time this season, where we saw him go for 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. So he would have hit this line, but I am leaning towards the under today, and this is why. So Daily Grind Fantasy, which I mentioned earlier, they do have this current line sitting at 54.2% chance of hitting, which is very good and an odd that you should be taking across all platforms that are offering this. Other books are currently offering them a whole point less than what this line is currently at on PrizePicks, so you're getting a pretty good cushion here of 1 point. Looking at his recent performances and how he's performed in the last 5 and last 10 games, he has hit this under in 3 out of his last 5 and 5 out of his last 10. This is a decent rate. It's nothing that stands out too much for him, but where I really like him staying under in this matchup as well is versus his opponent, the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets currently allow the 7th least amount of points to the shooting guard position and the 13th least in rebounds, giving them totally the 5th least amount of points to points and rebounds allowed to the shooting guard position. So again, I don't love CJ McCollum here. He just hit that over in points plus rebounds, hitting 24. So again, yes, he did have a 2-point cushion there in their last matchup versus the Hornets, but today I don't see that happening. But let's look at the same game and honestly the same team, and that's his teammate Jonas Valanciunas going over 22.5 points plus rebounds. As I mentioned earlier, they do have a 1-game history, and in that game, Jonas went for 29 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 assists, beating this line in just points alone, but then also putting up a very dominant 13 rebounds. Looking at Daily Grind Fantasy and where they have him at, they currently have this line at 54% chance of hitting. Other sportsbooks, again, are giving him a whole point more than what PrizePicks is currently giving you. So giving you that little bit of a cushion. But then other books that currently have this line matched, they are heavily favoring it for the over as well. Again, looking at his recent performances and how he's done in the last 5 and 10, he has hit this line in 4 out of his last 10 and 6 out of his last 10. So definitely hitting this at a high rate, hitting 80% of his last 5 games. And I expect the same today, considering that versus the Hornets, and points allowed to the center position, they allow the most points. Also rebounds, they allow the 2nd most rebounds to the center position as well, giving the points plus rebounds versus center the 1st most. So all signs are pointing up for Valanciunas, and I expect a very similar performance for what we saw in that December 15th matchup between these two teams anyways. So looking at the next pick, though, and that's Paolo Banchero going over 6.5 rebounds versus the Atlanta Hawks. These two teams do have a little bit of a history, facing off 2 times already this season, early in January and then early in November. That January matchup, we saw Paolo go for 35 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. And in that November matchup, 17 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. So in both of those matchups, we'd have seen him hit that line of over 6.5 rebounds. Now, looking at the positive EV value that we're getting from Daily Grind Fantasy, they currently have this line being hit at 53.6% chance. Other lines, again, are having him all at the exact same. So you're not really getting a cushion. All books are offering him currently at 6.5 point or rebounds. but they're currently favoring the over with an average of minus 136 juice. So I love that fact there. So again, 53.6% chance of hitting is absolutely something that you should be jumping on. Now, looking at his recent performance, last 5 and 10, he has hit this in 3 out of his last 5, 7 out of his last 10. So hitting this bet 70% of the time in his last 10 matchups. So definitely a high rate that I like. And I expect the same today because versus the Atlanta Hawks, currently they allow the 12th most rebounds to the power forward position. Now, if books start to catch onto this line and notice that it's a little low, I also like his points, and maybe you could even do points plus rebounds in this matchup because Atlanta ranks bottom 3 in both of those regards to the power forward position. I personally didn't love his line at 27.5 opening up. I see him hitting it. He hit it in his earlier matchup in January this year, but it's still a little high for me to be taking, and there wasn't really any positive EV lines there. So love him going over 6.5 rebounds. So that's the third pick, but let's move on to the fourth pick where we will be staying in the same game, but the opposite side of the ball. And that's Clint Capella going under 10.5 points. As I mentioned, they did have the 2 previous matchups, the January and November matchup. January matchup, Clint Capella, 4 points, 12 rebounds, 0 assists. And the November matchup, 6 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. So Daily Grind Fantasy currently has this hitting at 52.7% chance. Other books, again, are giving him at 9.5. So the fact that they're kind of hinting that, hey, this line may needs to be a little bit lower is kind of that indicator of like, maybe we were getting that whole point cushion that we asked him for. Also, other books that are matching him at 10.5, heavily favoriting it. So love that there at 52.7%. Recent performances in last 5 and 10. He has hit this in 4 out of his last 5, but then also 4 out of his last 10. We did see him kind of go down a stretch of 5 straight games of 11 plus points. But after that, he has again only hit this. He has hit the under in 4 out of his last 5. So now that he's on a downward trend, especially versus this Magic team, I love him in this matchup because versus the center position, Orlando allows the 6th least amount of points. So love that. And again, you saw in their previous 2 matchups where we saw Clint Capella go 30 plus minutes in both of those games. He wouldn't have even hit those lines combined. 4 points in the January, 6 points in the November, 10 points total. So the fact that they're offering this at 10.5, I love it, taking the under. So let's go ahead and smash that today. Now let's stick with another center here, moving on with our next picks, and that's Alperen Sengun going under 26.5 points plus assists. He currently doesn't have any history versus this New York Knicks team, and Daily Grind Fantasy is only giving him a 50% chance bet of hitting. So there really is no positive EV value here, but what I do like a lot, looking at his recent performances in his 5 and 10, he has hit this in 3 out of his last 5 and 6 out of his last 10. So middling somewhere just over that 50% mark in his recent game logs. But what I really like is versus this New York Knicks defense, points versus center, they allow the 5th least. Assists versus center, they allow the 2nd least. Those combined, points plus assists versus the center, they allowed the 3rd least. The Knicks are also great at defending against 2-point attempts. They allow the 11th least amount of points from 2-pointers, where we know that that's where Sengun's identity is and where he's shooting most of his shots. So yes, we're not getting a ton of positive EV value. We don't have any history to base it off of. The fact that the Knicks defense and their pace of play being a lot slower today, I think that Sengun is really going to struggle to find any dominance today versus them. And his recent matchup, he hasn't hit this in 3 out of it. He has hit the under in 3 out of his last 5. Now let's move on to the last pick for today, and that's Lauri Markkanen going over 11.5 rebounds plus assists. Again, another game where we're not seeing any history between these 2 teams, but Daily Grind Fantasy is giving you roughly a 52% chance of hitting at 51.8. All the other sports books are heavily favoring his odds with an average of minus 127 to go for the over on this. Now, looking at his recent performances of his last 5 and 10, he has hit this line in 4 of his last 5, 5 out of his last 10. So yes, he has struggled on the full 10, but his last 5, he has been so dominant on the boards, hitting double digits in majority of those games. And right now versus his opponent of the Golden State Warriors, they allow the 9th most rebounds to the power forward position and 5th most assists to them as well. So again, Markkanen has a really good shot at staying hot, keeping his trend up of hitting this line in 4 out of his last 5. And I think he really hits that today. Plus, we're getting decent odds from Daily Grind Fantasy at roughly 52%. So, anyways, guys, these are my 6 picks, and do I ever feel confident about them? Also, like I mentioned earlier, make sure you're checking the link in the description because you will find a lot of valuable information to make you a better sports bettor. Anyways, thank y'all so much for tuning into this episode, and I will see y'all next time.